Thank you very much, the Director General, Mark Donfried, for that very generous introduction. Uh, it is an absolute pleasure for me to be here this morning and speak to all of you. My dear friends, when I was asked about what I would talk about this morning, I thought to myself, what would I be most qualified to speak about? I reflected on my life, the achievements I've had, and the challenges that I've had to go through to reach those achievements. And I think I would not have amounted to much if I believe that one's size determines the scale of one's ambition or station in life. I think that you can clearly see that I'm not the tallest person in this room. Instead, I've always believed in standing tall, and that is also metaphorically, in standing mighty, and that is why whenever I speak, I make sure that I stand on a moral platform. Coming from the Maldives, a small state, I'm used to this sentiment. Small states are extremely vulnerable. We are on the front lines, fighting in the trenches of many global crises, including climate change, environmental degradation, economic collapse, heavy debt burdens, and many, many others. Our vulnerabilities were even more apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic, rolling back years of developmental gains and adding on to pre-existing challenges. Despite our small size, we punch above our weight. When we speak on these issues, we have the moral high ground to say what we say. Our size does not deter us, nor does it drown out our voices. When the Maldives applied to become a member of the United Nations in 1965, just few weeks after our independence, the bigger countries in the organization questioned our ability to serve. They questioned our capability to fulfill obligations of the United Nations Charter. They expressed doubts about our readiness to make independent decisions and make meaningful contributions to the international system. I can tell you with authority that we have proved our doubters wrong. The Maldives has certainly made its case for being a responsible, principled, capable member of the United Nations. In fact, the power of small states is seen across the multilateral system today. Small states are advocating on behalf of climate action, serving as a moral compass to many. They are the loudest in calls for multilateral approaches to maintenance of peace and security. They were the strongest proponents of vaccine equity, for which many have had to wait. They have consistently advocated for a fairer and more just economic system, one that leaves no one behind. And they are leading the charge on issues of sustainable development and human rights. Just last year, I concluded my presidency of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Just the 6th president from a small island developing state. I carried with me not only the voices of the Maldivian people, but the voices of every citizen from a small state. Every person who has told that their country had no prospects due to its size, and every small state that works day and night to make a difference for the better. Ladies and gentlemen, despite our collective efforts to do better, our world is riddled with conflict. Conflict between nations and effects of which reverberates across the globe. Conflicts against the elements and conflict among ourselves. The climate crisis rages, commodity prices fluctuate, debt burdens grow, economic inequality deepens, food security worsens. We are in the midst of a global crisis of epic proportions. For 3 years, we have struggled to cope with the devastating effects and after effects of COVID-19, its health effects and its economic impacts. What was meant to be a decade of action, my dear friends, has turned into a decade of recovery. And small states continue to face the brunt of it. We are among the worst affected. We continue to crumble under the pressure. But we have the power to make transformative changes and turn things around. Allow me to make 3 recommendations. Firstly, we must do more to help smaller states by giving them special considerations and by providing targeted solutions to their specific challenges. I'm reminded here of a quote from former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said, and I quote, "I see small island developing states as a magnifying glass. When we look through the SIDS lens, we see the vulnerabilities we all face." For small island developing states like the Maldives, our challenges are manifold. The increase in global temperatures is fatal for us. We are the lowest lying country. Maldives is the lowest lying country in the world, just 2.5 meters above sea level, just a little bit higher than my height. It could erase the whole of our country. For us, the difference between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, my friends, is death. It could erase the whole of our country and our own existence. And before the rising sea levels drown us, worsening storms, intensifying weather, and increasing warmer and acidic oceans will make living on our islands virtually impossible. And here I'm supposed to tell you, I'm attending the ITB, so come visit us before we are drowned. But my friends, we are the canary in the coal mine. The climate crisis will not only affect small island states. A rise in sea level will be devastating for many parts of Europe, North America, and Africa, and Asia. It affects us all. No one is going to be spared. I just came from Doha, where the 5th United Nations Conference on Least Developed Countries is taking place. Many small island states are still least developed countries. They continue to struggle, unable to mobilize resources to provide effectively for their people. We must make more resources available. We need to make the available resources more targeted, and this means catering to specific needs and challenges that every country faces. Understanding the countries, understanding their people, and understanding their requirements. This brings me to my second recommendation, to become more innovative with alternative measures. For the Maldives, since the creation of our tourism industry half a century ago, it has grown to be the main contributor to our GDP, the lifeblood of our economy. Yet, external shocks continue to affect us. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami was one such event that crumpled our economy to shambles and left us fearful and anxious for many years. Years of hard-earned livelihoods were washed within seconds. Hopes and dreams for a better future were broken in an instant. A large percentage of our people had to start from scratch, rebuilding their lives from the rubbles which were left behind. Those were difficult times that called for urgent measures from the international community to act, to provide assistance to countries in economic crunch, to help rebuild their economy and livelihoods. But did you know, just as we were facing the aftermath of the tsunami, we were also preparing to graduate from the LDC category. What this meant in practice was the loss of concessional financing, preferential access, like that which we enjoyed to the European markets for our fisheries. For centuries, Maldivians have practiced the most sustainable of fishery, catching fish, one hook, one line, and one fish at a time, one by one, reducing bycatch and virtually eliminating waste, as well as easing pressure on stock. We were an early advocate for eco-labeling, receiving Marine Stewardship Council certificate way back in 2012. But because of graduation from LDC category, we now pay a hefty tariff to get our fish into the European market. Our fishery, which is the most sustainable in the world, continues to be penalized, making it harder to compete with other countries that are less sustainable. So while we celebrated graduation, we mourned the hit to our fisher community, which amounts to over 1/3 of our population. With no straightforward pathways, we continue to lobby for the fairer prices since 2011. And just recently, the COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc on our economy. With the borders closed, not just in the Maldives, but around the world, for the first time since tourism began in the Maldives 50 years ago, no tourists were visiting. We became a no-income country overnight. The pandemic not only undermined decades of socio-economic progress, it worsened inequalities in our societies, particularly for women and girls who have borne the brunt of the economic fallout from the pandemic. Without concessional financing, my friends, I'm afraid the next pandemic-like event will be the end of us and many like us. This is why we need concessional financing and a new metric to access eligibility to concessional financing. This is why the need for the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, or the MVI, has become ever more important, while taking into account the particular vulnerabilities of small states instead of GDP per capita metric. As President of the General Assembly, I constituted a high-level panel of experts, co-chaired by the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Prime Minister Gaston Brown, and the former Prime Minister of Norway, Ernest Solberg, to carry forward and finalize the work of the MVI. I'm glad to note that their work is expected to conclude this year, and hope that international financial institutions adopt the MVI when considering access to finance. The call for alternative measures to development that go beyond GDP is yet another issue that has been spearheaded by small states, which is why we must listen to small states to find solutions to our collective problems. My third and final recommendation. I know it comes as a surprise to see small states occupy high positions. We come from different parts of the world with a variety of economic, social, and cultural characteristics. Yet, there is strength in our diversity. We are morally driven with commitment to solve issues that affect us all. So trust me when I say our voices need to be heard, the voices of the small states. Whether it is about maintaining global peace and security, addressing the climate crisis, promoting and protecting human rights, we know we can contribute. And just to give you an example, when Russia invaded Ukraine, at the United Nations General Assembly, 141 countries voted in favor of the resolution that was submitted to the General Assembly condemning Russian invasion. Out of the 141 countries, 103 countries were small countries. The small countries who voted in favor of this resolution were not voting against a country or with a larger country. They were voting for themselves. We small countries believe that only protection, only security for us in the international system is going to be on a rules-based system. Respect to the Charter of the United Nations. The small countries had the courage to stand up for the Charter. They were voting for the Charter and the rules-based international system. The international financial architecture, my friends, is one area where the voice of small states is woefully silent. Unless we are trusted to lead and given the chance to serve, we as a civilization will not advance, and we will lose out. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenges of small states are widely known. We continue to weather the storms and come out stronger. As countries with large ocean territories, we are used to rough weather and choppy seas. But every boat has its limits, and the small states today are reaching the limit because of the crises that are raging around the world. These are difficult times that call for strengthened efforts with strong leadership and commitment. It is vital that the world comes together and solve the peace and security challenges we face. Together, we have the resources, the power, the imagination to usher in a brighter future for humanity without leaving anyone behind, even the smallest amongst us behind. Together, we must band together to reform the current multilateral system to one that is more equitable, just, and fairer, one that serves the many, not just the few. And together we can. I thank you.